Good evening, everybody. You're very welcome to the Music Network Music Capital Scheme Award 2 and 3 information session. My name is Deirdre Moynihan. I'm the head of programs at Music Network, and for the next 25 minutes or so, I'm going to share some information with you about Award 2 and 3 of the scheme. And there's a lot of similarities with these awards, so I'm going to talk about both simultaneously, and where there is a difference or something to draw your attention to, I certainly will do that along the way. I'm going to be talking through the guidelines and also speaking about the application process and the assessment process. And if you haven't already done so, you might like to download the guidelines for either Award 2 or 3, whichever you are thinking of applying to, directly from the comment section. So my colleague Raluca is going to put a link in the comment section so you can download those two sets of guidelines directly from there right now. And if you have any questions along the way, feel free to type them into the comment section and I will address anything that I haven't already spoken about at the end of the session. So while you're downloading the guidelines, I'm just going to share my screen and then we can get started. Now, I think we're good to go. So this is the Music Capital Scheme 2022 Award 2 and 3 information session for individual professional performing musicians. The Music Capital Scheme is managed by Music Network and it's funded by the Department of Tourism, Culture, Arts, Gaeltacht, Sport and Media. So what is the Music Capital Scheme and who can apply? Essentially, it provides support for the purchase of musical instruments, and you can apply for up to 50% of the cost of a musical instrument. You can also apply for 50% of maintenance and repair costs when it is one-off restoration of an instrument. For both Award 2 and 3, you must be an individual professional performing musician. You must be aged 18 and over. You must be, or you can be, performing in any genre, so very open in that respect, and you must be resident in the Republic of Ireland, although certain exceptions apply there at the discretion of the panel. But if you are resident outside of Ireland, you would have to make a very strong case outlining how this award would benefit the arts in Ireland. So the total funding available for Award 2, and this was announced in December 2022, was 112,000 for Award 2, and the funding available for Award 3 is 58,000. Now let's look at the differences between Award 2 and 3. So Award 2 is for individual established professional performing musicians, and Award 3 is for individual emerging professional performing musicians. So I thought it would be useful just to look at that in a little more detail, because we do get questions. Award 3 was introduced just last year, so people have been ringing up and asking, you know, which award they should apply for. So this hopefully will provide some clarity in that respect. So looking at Award 2 first, established professional performing musicians would be musicians of any age, performing in any genre, who have a demonstrable track record in professional music performance. Although they may not earn income continuously or exclusively from the performance practice, they identify and are recognized by their peers as professional musicians. So comparing that with Award 3, if you're an individual emerging professional performing musician, you can be of any age and performing in any genre. So that is the exact same. You can be an emerging musician at any age. An emerging musician would be a musician who is in the process of mastering their music performance practice and are in the early years of establishing a professional performing career. So that's a clear difference there. Established musicians would have a demonstrable track record in performance, whereas emerging musicians would be in the process of mastering their practice and in the early years of establishing a professional performing career. Emerging musicians would have some experience, but have not yet established a solid reputation as a professional musician, although they identify and are recognized by their peers as professional musicians. So what that would mean essentially is that, and this applies to both awards, those you collaborate with, those you work with, would recognize you as a professional musician. So I hope that provides you with some clarification in relation to which award you personally should be thinking of applying for. But if you'd like to talk further about that, do feel free to get in contact with us directly, and we will offer any advice we can there. So let's look at eligible and ineligible expenditure. There's a table on page 2 of both guidelines. It's the same table, or sorry, there are 2 tables actually, one which lists eligible expenditure and one which lists ineligible expenditure. So do consult those tables, because there may be items in both that you might not be aware of. You know, some things that you aren't aware of you can apply for, and some things that maybe aren't actually eligible under this particular scheme. So then reasons why your application may be ineligible. So things you want to avoid here. So if your application is received after the deadline, now the deadline is 2 p.m. on Tuesday, the 28th of February. So really key that you remember and take note of that date. We're going to have plenty of reminders of it during this session, but do try and submit your application well in advance of the deadline. You know, don't leave it until right down to the wire, in case you might have an internet problem or something on the day. It could be very stressful. So I would recommend trying to submit at least the day before, if you can at all. Another reason why an application may be considered ineligible is if it is missing essential support materials. So we'll go through the essential support materials a little later, and you have to submit all of the essential support materials, or your application cannot be assessed fully. Your application must comply with the award conditions, and they're listed in the guidelines. And again, we'll talk about them in a little while. If the requested amount exceeds 50% of the total instrument cost. So as I mentioned earlier, you can apply for up to 50% of the instrument cost, but you know, if you submitted an application for 60% or 70%, your application would understandably be ineligible then. An interesting point then to make is your application would be ineligible if you have already purchased the instrument. So you cannot apply for funding retrospectively to purchase an instrument or for an instrument you have already purchased. So do bear that in mind. And then previous awardees who have not complied with award conditions their application would be ineligible. Now we'll move on to the application process, just to explain a little bit about that. So it's a completely online process. You must visit musicnetwork.ie, and you can download the guidelines, well, as many of you probably have done here today, or you can download them directly from the Music Network website. After that, create an account on the application portal. Again, this is done through the same page on the Music Network website. It's a very simple registration process. And once you're registered, you can start filling in your application form. And it's very user-friendly in that you can do this in stages. You don't have to do it in one sitting at all. And you can save a draft of your application as many times as you like, and then only submit it when you are 100% happy with the content and that you've uploaded all of the essential support materials. Of course, again, a reminder, you must submit your application before the deadline. The application process, or the window closes at 2 p.m. and you won't be able to submit after that on Tuesday, the 28th of February. Now, once you have submitted, you should straight away or very shortly afterwards receive an automated confirmation email from Music Network. And if you don't receive this confirmation email, please do get in touch with us. It would mean that we haven't received your application. You know, there could have been a glitch in the internet, or who knows what the reason may be, but we will certainly help you resolve it if you contact us. So do check your spam email if something doesn't come into your inbox. And if you haven't received confirmation email, contact us straight away as far as you can in advance of the deadline, and we will certainly help you and do our best to resolve any issue. And then just to mention that everyone will receive results of the assessment by email in May. So then just to explain a little bit about the application form, so you know what to expect. So there are 5 sections in the application form. The first is very straightforward. It's just your contact details, and you confirm that you're over 18 years of age. Section 2 is all about your career. So you list your principal instrument, the primary genre you perform, and you upload your CV and your audio and video samples in section 2. You're asked to list any instruments you own and provide some information about those instruments. And you provide a breakdown of your career over the next 3 years and summarize what direction you expect your career to take over the next few years. Then just to mention in section 2, what is relevant for award 3. So this is where the 2 awards differ. In section 2, there's an additional element for award 3. And this is a required or an essential support material. You're asked to upload letters of recommendation from peers or mentors. And I'll elaborate a little bit more about that in a minute. So then moving on to section 3, you are asked to outline some information about the proposed instrument you are intending to purchase. So you're asked, have you sourced the instrument? And if so, to provide details of the cost and the brand or maker, for example. If you haven't sourced it, you're asked to outline how you plan or how you intend to research and source your instrument, excuse me. You're then asked to upload 2 quotations for the instrument you intend to purchase. And it's mandatory. Again, this is an essential support item, and we'll talk about that again in more detail. You're asked how you will fund the remaining 50%. So that could be savings you have already or projected earnings, but you're asked to outline how you intend to do that. And then you're asked, what difference would this instrument make to your career? And this is a really good opportunity to make your case and to outline why it is so important that you need this instrument. You know, maybe your current instrument is holding you back, you know, you might have outgrown it, and just it's a great opportunity to outline why you need this instrument. Then we move on to section 4, which relates to the support material. So there's a checklist in both application forms. And so for award 2, there will be 3 essential support items listed on this checklist. And for award 3, there'll be 4 essential support materials listed on the checklist. And this is very useful because you need to make sure that you have uploaded all of those items earlier in the form. And in section 4, you also have the option to upload some optional support materials, you know, additional items that you can, if you like, upload if you feel they make your case stronger or showcase your work in a particularly positive light. And then section 5 is a short section in relation to research and feedback, some simple research questions. And if you'd like to provide feedback to Music Network about the Music Capital scheme, we always welcome feedback. Do feel free to submit the feedback in section 5. So they are the 5 sections of the application form. Then just to show you the ways in which you enter information, it's very straightforward. I'm sure you will be familiar with all of these. So you have text boxes and drop-down menus, things like that. 2.3 there is where you would be submitting additional text, maybe a paragraph about something. So I just wanted to include that to point out that there are word count limits on the bottom right-hand corner of all of these text boxes. So do take note of the word limits, because you know, if you go over them, you'll have to go back and edit, and that can be quite frustrating, as you know. So yeah, we put in the word count limits, and they differ, you know, depending on the question. So do take note of that. Then just to show you the way in which you'll be uploading materials through the form itself. As you can see there, 2.3, you would just click on the choose file and browse to where it is on your computer and upload the file. But underneath that, then there's a lot of very helpful information, and many of the questions have tips and information underneath just to act as reminders or to provide advice and guidance. So do take care to read those tips and this information if it appears beside a question. So just to, I suppose this explains, for example, in this 2.3, you're uploading audio and video recordings. So you can upload up to 4 files. That could be a combination of 3 MP3 files and then a Word doc. You can upload your audio recordings as MP3s, or you can share them as links. So if you were sharing them as links, you would just put the links into a Word doc and upload that instead of uploading the files themselves. You might want to share links if you want to share, for example, a SoundCloud file or a video link on YouTube or something like that. The accompanying Word doc is to provide information about the recordings for the panel. So, maybe the title of the piece, list the instrumentalists or singers who are performing, maybe where it was recorded. If you'd like the panel to listen from a specific point in the recording, it might be a longer recording and you would like them to listen maybe from kind of 13 minutes in, do put that down in the recording information, and the panel will certainly go to wherever you'd like them to listen from. Also, I suppose just to say that, this is your opportunity to really showcase what you do. So be selective in the recordings you submit and make sure, they are the best possible representation of your work. And then just one last thing to mention, sometimes when people share links to audio and video files, maybe a SoundCloud file, it might be password protected. So just take care that if the file you're sharing or the link to the file you're sharing is password protected, that you include the password, as otherwise the panel won't be able to assess the recording and obviously they can't assess your work then. So then just to show you the very last thing down in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see there is a save draft and apply button. So when you want to save a draft, if you've completed a few questions and you want to come back to it later, you just scroll down to the bottom of the form, save the draft as many times as you want. And when you're happy with it, click apply. Once you've clicked apply, you can't edit anything. So, just make sure you're totally happy with it before you click apply. So that is the application form. So now just to look at the essential support material. So here for award 2 and 3, there are 3 items of essential support materials. And for award 3, there is one additional one, which I mentioned earlier, that you would be uploading in section 2. So looking at the essential support materials, we have, first of all, your curriculum vitae, a maximum of 2 pages, and do list your achievements and accolades in reverse chronological order. So the panel see the most recent activities and concerts and all of that first. Then the 2 quotations for the proposed instrument for purchase. So I was mentioning these earlier, and so you would need to submit 2 quotations from 2 separate suppliers for the instrument that you are proposing to purchase. If your instrument is a bespoke instrument, where a maker is designing it specially for you, you still have to submit a quote for the nearest or the closest comparable instrument. And the reason for this is it is for, I suppose, essential for comparison purposes to demonstrate value for money. And the panel will be taking this into account for all applications. So even if you are proposing to purchase a bespoke instrument, you do need to source a quote for the closest comparable instrument. If you haven't sourced your instrument yet, and you haven't a specific instrument in mind, you need to submit 2 quotes for comparable instruments. What constitutes a quote? Sometimes we're asked that as well. Well, it could be an email or a letter from the supplier or maker, or you could also, or alternatively, submit a website screenshot. So if you were purchasing from an online music store, you could browse to where the instrument is displayed. And as long as it would have the details of the instrument, the cost of the instrument, and the details of the supplier on that screenshot, you can just take the screenshot and submit that as a quote. Sometimes people submit links, but the links can change all of the time. So by the time the panel come to assess, the link may no longer be valid. So it's definitely best to submit a screenshot rather than a link, as the quote may no longer be there if you submit a link. Now, just to mention, within the quotes, often you would find that shipping costs are included. So shipping costs are ineligible. That's stated on the page 2 of the guidelines. They're ineligible. So you need to deduct the shipping cost from the final total in order to work out the cost of the instrument that you're applying for. Then the third essential support material is your audio and video recordings. So we've spoken about them, and you can upload those through the form or upload links. And then finally, for award 3, letters of recommendation. So each letter being a maximum of 2 pages, you can upload up to 3 letters of recommendation. And it will be a letter of recommendation from a peer or a mentor or a teacher, someone who recommends your work, your abilities as a musician. So sometimes we're asked, is it a character reference? And no, it's not. It's someone who can recommend you as a musician and thinks highly of your work. Then just to mention, you can upload up to 10 support materials. You don't have to, but you can if you feel you have something that would help, I suppose, showcase your work in the best possible light. It might be a very positive review. It might be an adjudication. It might be a publicity materials. Yeah, so just you can upload up to 10 of those if you choose to do so. Now, looking at the assessment procedure, here we have the selection criteria, and they are also outlined in the guidelines of both Award 2 and Award 3. They are similar, but obviously, as you can see there, there's a difference at the beginning of both. So just to mention that selection criteria, these are the criteria that the assessment panel will be referring to when they're assessing all applications. So it's really important that you keep these in mind when you are preparing your application. And just be mindful of them. So the difference between Award 2 and 3, and this comes back to, I suppose, what we spoke about earlier, the difference between an established musician having a demonstrable track record and an emerging musician being more early career stage. So this is taken into account in the selection criteria. So for Award 2, the track record of the applicant in relation to the proposed instrument for purchase is weighted at 50%, but for Award 3, the track record of the applicant in relation to the proposed instrument for purchase is weighted at 25%, and the demonstrated potential and career development plans are weighted at 25%. So that's an important distinction and something to note depending on which award you are intending to apply for. Looking at the conditions, so for both awards, applicable to both, up to 50% of the instrument cost will be awarded, and the applicant must demonstrate how the remaining 50% will be funded. You must demonstrate that the instrument will be played, regularly used in the Republic of Ireland. The provision of housing, insurance, maintenance, and repair. What this means is you're asked to outline where the instrument will be kept. You know, it might be in your house, who will insure it. So to list the insurance company that you intend to take out insurance with, and then plans for maintenance or repair as applicable. If you are awarded, you must write to Music Network within 2 weeks of notification of the award to arrange drawdown of your award. And with that, you're asked to provide your bank details, your PPS number, and your tax clearance details if your award is over €10,000. Another condition is that you must source and purchase your instrument within 6 months. Any proposed change to the instrument for purchase must be approved by Music Network in advance. What that relates to is if by the time it comes for you to purchase your instrument, perhaps the instrument you had intended to purchase is no longer available from the supplier, and so you have to consider the nearest comparable instrument. Just come and talk to us, and so we can agree together that on what your nearest comparable instrument is. So there's no issue. Just come and talk to us, and we will work that out. Receipts must be submitted to Music Network within 6 months of the award payment. And just to note, if the final cost is lower, the surplus amount or the balance would be returned. What that means is if by the time you come to purchase your instrument, the cost had been reduced, wouldn't that be wonderful? It doesn't happen always in life, but if that happens, the balance or the excess, if you like, would be returned to Music Network, and that would be added to the Music Capital Scheme fund for the next round of the award. Now, all successful applicants, so all awardees, are asked to provide annual reports for a period of 3 years, and also to acknowledge the award for a period of 3 years. And then, as you can appreciate, non-compliance with conditions, if you don't comply with the conditions of the award would be refunded. And again, the amount added to the Music Capital Scheme Award Fund for the next round of the scheme. So just some tips for applicants now. I'm sure these are obvious tips, but look, we all need reminders of these things. The simplest things can trip us all up. So certainly the first piece of advice would be to really take care to read the award guidelines correctly. I see there's an error in the slides there. That should be the award 2 and 3 guidelines, of course, for this information session. But I suppose the advice is the same. It's to read the guidelines very carefully. Do not assume assessors are familiar with your work. So if you might be someone who is very well known, and I'm sure there are many people who apply for support who are very established, do not assume the assessors are familiar with your work. What that means is the assessors can only assess your application based on content of your application. So put forward any information, any files that you feel are relevant to share with the panel to showcase what it is you do. So read the notes for each question on the application form. That just refers to where we looked at the question in relation to uploading audio and video files. As you saw, there were lots of notes underneath that. So do read those notes because they do have some helpful guidance for you there. The information in the application should be clear, concise, and relevant. And of course, then another reminder to submit in advance of the deadline. Again, Tuesday, the 28th of February at 2 p.m. Now, I just want to tell you about some additional support sessions which are being offered, some really useful, really helpful support sessions. And the good news is they're all free. So first of all, next Friday, that's Friday, the 27th of January at 10:30 a.m. We're delighted that Mairead O'Reilly will be presenting a Zoom seminar, Creation of Recordings, and Mairead will provide a step-by-step guide to presenting good quality recordings, which are the best possible representation of your work and, you know, relate to the proposed instrument for purchase. So that session will be extremely helpful. So do come along to that if you can. Following that, there are a number of free individual one-to-one Zoom and phone sessions. So from January 30th, you can apply to book a session with Mairead O'Reilly, who you will have heard speak in a broader sense at the Creation of Recording seminar. And then from February 6th, we're delighted that Arts and Cultural Manager Liz Pole will will take sessions one-to-one with people. These sessions would best suit applicants who have begun their applications, and you can bring your draft application along to the session. And so Liz will offer guidance on how to write a clear and persuasive application and how to present your work in the best light and with the selection criteria in mind. So another very useful session to consider applying for. The sessions are, as you can appreciate, limited, and they will be, I suppose, given out, if you like, or bookings taken on a first come, first served basis, but priority will be given to those who are first time applicants and those who have been previously unsuccessful, so who haven't been awarded through the scheme before. You can visit musicnetwork.ie for additional information about the seminar and about the one-to-one Zoom and phone sessions. And to register for the seminar, you do that through the Music Network website. If you email Abby at musicnetwork.ie, she is the person to contact to book a one-to-one session with either Mairead or Liz Pole. So we've come to the end of the session, and at this point, it's, I suppose, for me to ask if you have any questions. Do ask them now. Type them into the comments section. Now, you might need to mull over what we have gone through, and you may have questions, I'm sure, in the coming days and weeks. And if so, do feel free to get in touch with us by email or by phone. You can email us on capitalscheme@musicnetwork.ie, or you can phone us on 083 0955 956 any afternoon from 2 p.m. apart from Wednesdays. And then, of course, a final reminder of that deadline, Tuesday, 2 p.m., the 28th of February. So at this point, I'm going to just stop sharing my screen and just take a moment to see if there are any questions. Hopefully I have covered most of what you may need, but as I said, I'm sure you'll have questions as you mull over the information and as you really get into the guidelines. Just to say that these information sessions, so that we had one for Award 1 on Tuesday, and today's one for Award 2 and 3 are going to be on Facebook for people to view after this session finishes. So if you know someone who is interested to apply to the scheme for either Award 1 or Award 2 and 3, do let them know that the information sessions are available for them to view, and they can view the whole session or dip in and out of them, whatever they feel is most helpful. And do let people know about the upcoming seminars. There are additional seminars for Award 1 applicants next week. So all of that information is on the Music Network website. And of course, do let people know about the opportunity to book one-to-one sessions with any of the seminar presenters, and of course, with Liz Cole. So I don't think we have any questions. So at this point, I think it's just for me to say thank you for coming to the information session, and to say I hope we have provided sufficient information to help you get started. And do contact us at any stage if you have any questions. You have all of our detail. We'd be delighted to offer any help and guidance that we can. And best of luck with your applications. Thank you very much.